What do you see as the biggest challenge from new providers when dealing with insurance for the first time?
There's a pretty steep learning curve, and I think what's really important is understanding, one, the sequencing of what you need to do first.
Even great billers that do benefit checks every month, you can still wind up in this position where family changed their benefits, and then that new insurance company, they have a new primary, and no one knows.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back to ABA Business Leaders Podcast. I'm April.
I'm Steven.
Yes, you are. Well, here we are again. Another Back to Basics episode. This is where we go back to the foundations of running an ABA business, whether you're dreaming about starting or you're already running one or preparing for what's next. We'll meet you where you are. So, the earlier you start working on these foundations, the better your chances of success, the fewer problems you'll face, and the smoother your growth will be. Just like in clinical practice, early intervention makes all the difference. So each episode, as we've had quite a few of these Back to Basics episodes out, so if you've been listening along, you are familiar with how we're doing things, but we focus on one core business topic and talk about what it means if you're starting, scaling, or transitioning. So no matter where you are in your journey, you'll walk away with clarity and next steps. So today, we're diving into one of the most foundational and honestly, one of the most overwhelming, let's be real, parts of running an ABA company, insurance workflows. So to help us break this down and make some sense of it, we are joined by Sagar, co-founder and COO of SILNA Health, where he oversees product, operations, and support. Before SILNA, Sagar worked in high-level product roles across startups, growth stage companies, and major public companies. He has a degree in computer science and economics from UC Berkeley, and he brings a powerful combination of technical expertise and real-world operational knowledge to the ABA field. We're very excited to have you here with us, Sagar. We're excited to break things down, or for you to help us break things down in a way that makes sense, taking the confusion out of things like contracting, credentialing, benefit checks, authorizations, and scaling insurance systems. So, but we're going to look at that all through the Back to Basic lens. And so everyone listening, just take a deep breath. It's okay. Sagar is here to help us. So let's jump in. Let's look at the first of all, thank you for being here with us, Sagar. And let's start with those starters. Let's look at what new owners need to know about dealing with insurance.
Firstly, it's a pleasure to be speaking with you both today, and very excited for this conversation. When owners are starting up their business and thinking about dealing with insurance, there's really three key categories owners should be thinking about. First and foremost, they should be thinking about contracting, credentialing, enrollment. Are they set up to be able to actually get in network with insurers as a group? And are they able to get their BCBAs, BCBAs, and other clinicians also in network so that they can start to see patients and make sure ABA therapy is a network benefit? Now, there are some providers that work out of network with a lot of insurances, but it is a tougher journey given the cost share to the patient, the rates, etc. So that's the first bucket. The second bucket is thinking about care readiness workflows, clearing patients for care. That involves getting patients verified with insurance companies when they come in, making sure if prior authorizations are required, they're authorized as they come in for the initial assessment and then for the treatment. And then on an ongoing basis, making sure that their insurance coverage continues to stay active. You learn whether they gain or lose coverage, and you continue to make sure they are getting reauthorized on an ongoing basis. So every session you do render services for, you will be covered. So that's the second bucket. It's care readiness workflows around verification, authorization, eligibility. Then there's a third bucket, which is, okay, I've provided services now. How do I get paid for the work I do? That is claim submissions, payment posting, dealing with denied claims, appeals. And so that's the sort of back end of the revenue cycle workflow, which is making sure you get paid for the work you do and making sure you get paid in a timely manner, have a fast accounts receivable timeline where you're not sort of floating, cash for a while so you don't have cash flow issues. To make sure you broadly have a lot of health with how you work with insurance companies and the financial element of your business, investing in all these three functional areas is critical and important.
Yeah. Yeah. All of those you have to have all of it because if one part's missing, it really throws it makes those buckets, so to say, it takes them off balance. Right.
Yeah.
And it's super important. We've unfortunately have heard a lot of stories about providers who are going along and providing services for a month, 2 months, 3 months plus. And then they start getting all these denials and they recognize they haven't been doing authorization checks. Maybe they'll do an authorization check every 6 months.
Oh, that's totally how I did it. So I was our biller, right, for our ABA practice for probably 4 years. And the only time I would do benefit checks,
way back in the day.
The only time I would do benefit checks is at re-auth. That's it. That's it only. And how many times did I get burned where, we find out 3 months in, 4 months in, maybe dad got a new job, maybe he got a promotion and he's got a different plan. We don't know about it. Maybe it's with a different a funder. We might even be in network with them. Great, right? But I don't have a new treatment plan in with this new funder, and they will come back and say, no, we're not paying for that because we require pre-authorization. And it's so you're out this money, and then you have to make a decision. Because it certainly isn't the company's fault. Maybe it is, right? Maybe I should have been, I should have been doing benefit check.
Totally your fault.
but the family should also be telling you if there is an update to their insurance, right? But for the same reason, I didn't do benefit checks. Things get busy, a lot of the families we worked with had multiple kids, right? And so they're doing all this stuff. And then ABA is super intensive, and then they forget, right? And so you're now in this space where, am I going to charge them $20,000, $30,000 because insurance isn't covering this 3-month span of services, or am I going to eat that cost? That's a terrible place to find yourself in, right? And I mean, I'm taught, we were working with a company in California, that exact same thing. We talk about it very often, right? Is hey, even great billers that do benefit checks every month, twice a month, right? You can still wind up in this position where family changed their benefits, and then that new insurance company, they have a new primary, and no one knows, right? So it's super difficult.
Absolutely. I think the way to do a really good job here is to be proactive, not reactive. It's to have good processes, good rigor, good discipline, and not sort of only deal with denials or issues and then try to retroactively solve problems. Retroactively solving problems are also often much harder, take a lot longer. You have to go back and forth, handle appeals, try to get exceptions made. Whereas just having especially a tight care readiness process where you're monitoring on an ongoing basis for all your active patient roster, which kiddos are active each month, each 2 weeks. If they've changed their plans, making sure you're tracking their new plan. If they've lost coverage, flagging that immediately. So the day after the parent loses coverage because they got a new job and you're dealing with their old insurance, you can actually go proactively reach out to them to say, hey, it looks like you've lost coverage. Have you got a new job? If so, could you give us your new insurance? Because we're not seeing it. If you don't have other insurance, we may have to move you to a cash pay plan because unfortunately insurance is going to cover services, and you can have that conversation in basically real time. So there's not this risk of, weeks or months of denied services in the middle.
Yeah, for sure. I know when Jeff was on the podcast before, he's also from SILNA, like that was one of the biggest, I guess, areas of our conversation was about like authorizations and why authorizations are important. And I'm so glad to have you here today to not only give a reminder that they're important, but to exactly what you're saying, like explain how you can set up the processes and the workflows to make this like just part of how you work, and the preventative stuff, not the putting out fires. Stephen talks a lot about Mighty Mouse syndrome, and where like it's like you're here to save the day, right? And like we kind of get in this mode of wanting to put out fires or getting just so used to putting out fires. And instead, like let's shifting our energy to putting processes and procedures in place and workflows to figure out how to do this. Because then then we have more time to do the other stuff, right? So we already talked about, the little story that we shared, but from your perspective, what do you see as the biggest challenge from new providers when dealing with insurance for the first time?
Yeah, I think new providers have the best of motivations to want to start their own practice. They really care about the care they're delivering, care about the families they're working with and the patients they're working with. Often they come from clinical backgrounds or like they're clinical directors at larger providers. And so there's a pretty steep learning curve on dealing with insurance companies. And I think what's really important is understanding, one, the sequencing of what you need to do first. And typically, like the credentialing, contracting, enrollment piece comes first if you want to get a network, because without that, you can't start to see patients that are network. You can't submit claims and get a network benefits processed. And so that's sort of the very first thing. And there's great sort of third-party companies, tech forward companies, like sort of just like consulting firms that sort of help with that. And, you can also try to do it yourself if you feel like you want to sort of learn, but like you have either option available. So that's the very first hurdle to get over. Once you've got like a few contracts and you can start to like unlock access to care for patients under those insurances, then the big challenge is, okay, how do you actually learn about all these processes, how to get authorizations done, how to get patients verified accurately, submit claims, and this is where it's much faster, in my opinion, to sort of partner with a very specialized, third party that manages this for you end to end, so you can really focus on like all the other things you need to run your business, because you have to hire a team of BCBAs, RBTs, potentially if you're trying to do office-based services, find a brick and mortar location to rent out. And so there's a million things on your plate. And, what you should be thinking is how can you create leverage for yourself with your time and energy and take some key things off that may, if not done well, really create challenges for you downstream. So for a new provider, that's what I would recommend is for each of these pillars, can you find someone you trust, ideally who's, well-referenced and who leverages technology in some way, who's not just doing this manually on your behalf, to run these processes really well, so you can focus on the 100 other things you need to do to run your business. But I think a lot of people, are like, I'll figure it out as I go. And I think there's like expensive and painful lessons to be learned unless you're genuinely committed to learning all the details yourself, which some folks I don't think have the patience for either.
Yeah, totally. I was well, let's see what happens, right? So this was one of those things that, had you all been around when I was billing, this is like an easy, like there is nothing more challenging than dealing with pre-auths and benefit checks. Once you have a practice management software and you have the codes in and you've got your session notes set up right, you just hit submit and it's done. Like it's really done. A lot of these practice managements, as you said, like they're great for this, right? And they do keep denials to a minimum for the most part. Now, of course, you're always going to have some denials, but by far the biggest challenge after that is keeping up with benefit checks and making sure that you have the right insurance on file. And and the thing, like you said, like if when I'm coaching a business through startup, I do recommend doing your own credentialing for many reasons. And you can listen to our other podcast on should I credential myself or should I hire somebody else for that one. But then the next part is the benefit checks. And when you're a solo BCBA, like you said, you're hiring people, you're dealing with the parents, you're having to do treatment plan updates, all of this stuff. It's so easy to overlook. I'll get to those benefit checks next month, or I'll do those later, and then you never do them, right?
Absolutely. The part that I think people don't anticipate when they start is, everyone, I think, has a good grasp of billing. Like, I have to submit claims to get paid for the work I do. Conduct credential enrollment is so obvious because without it, you can't really get started and get off the ground. But I think what gets sort of unnoticed initially that ends up becoming a real problem is these care readiness workflows. Like, do I have authorization in file? Have I verified this patient's benefits accurately? Have I monitored this patient on an ongoing basis to make sure their insurance continues to be active? And the surprising area most providers find themselves in is the top reason for claim denials is actually not often like, I just submitted the claim incorrectly, or there's an issue with my session notes. It's these issues up front in the process of working with the patient that they didn't do right, then cause these issues downstream. The number one reason is typically an issue to do with prior authorization in ABA. At a lot of practices, you don't have prior authorization on file. The prior authorization on file didn't cover these codes. The prior authorization expired and you weren't aware of it. Right. Or there are benefits eligibility related issues. This insurance plan terminated and, you didn't know. So even though you have a 6-month authorization, you only got 3 months covered because the insurance plan terminated 3 months in. The benefits for this patient don't cover either ABA therapy or the place of service you're rendering services in. Right. You thought you could do a school-based service. Turns out this payer doesn't cover school-based services. You should have known that before designing the treatment plan around school-based services. And so that level of detail and rigor is what, we at SILNA help providers with, so that when they're rendering services, they're really confident that as long as the patient continues to have active coverage, they will get paid for those services they render.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, this is kind of the heavy lift, the ongoing nagging, right? It's like death by 1,000 pinpricks, right? Like this is the piece that if you just, I'll get to it later, and like I said, just so many people get there, and then what do we do now? We're out $10,000, $20,000, yep, which would probably cover the entirety of the cost, right, for this service for so long, right? And it's a no-brainer. And when I'm talking to a BCBA, like they even want to try to do the billing first, which I do recommend, just see how it goes. You should have a really good understanding of billing anyway, right? You should be able to look at a remittance and yep, understand, hey, normally we see Jenny 10 hours a week. Why did we see them 40 hours this week, right? Like, so you can get a good understanding on what you're billing, how you're billing it. But this is the piece I think that SILNA does that I don't know of anybody else that does it like that, right? Where this is the heavy lift where, again, billing is not super difficult once you have all the codes in the practice management, but I think this is the piece that really gets people.
Absolutely. The difference with prior authorizations and billing is that billing is a very standardized process, payer to payer. It's the same form you submit. The CMS, Center, the government has actually done a good job in standardizing the process for submission. The prior authorization workflow lacks standardization entirely. Every payer does it differently. Yeah. And so, and the other part is it evolves and changes in ways that you cannot anticipate and may not be very explicitly communicated to you. And if you don't keep up, you're going to be caught off guard. Some recent examples, if you're a provider in the state of North Carolina, Trillium, which is one of the big managed care plans for North Carolina Medicaid, decided to, after not requiring authorization for many years, start requiring authorizations on 10/1. A lot of providers were caught off guard. They had like a month or so of denials until they realized Trillium changed their policy. Now, we knew of this because we keep a close eye on this updates in early August, and we had 2 months to tell providers, hey, gear up to make sure you have treatment plans ready by 10/1 for your Trillium patients, because you start submitting authorizations for them, and we can help you with that. There's another example where if you're provided in the state of California, Blue Shield of California, which is one of the largest payers in ABA in the state of California, is changing their authorization process, where they used to use Magellan as utilization management provider to submit authorizations through, but they're actually going to go and start managing authorizations themselves in January. So if you were just used to, doing things a certain way, and you're like, okay, this is a process I built an SOP around, I've trained my team around, then, come January 1st, if you don't update your process, you're not going to get, authorizations approved for those Blue Shield patients, and you're going to be in a challenging spot. Maybe the last example I'll share is, in Florida, there were a lot of providers early in the year that were aware that Florida Medicaid was actually going to break out into 5, 6 different managed care plans like Sunshine Health. Even though they were aware of it, because Medicaid actually did a good job of communicating to every provider, they found it really challenging because then now there's 5 different processes, and your one cohort of patients under this Medicaid now are in 5 different groups under 5 different MCOs. Each of them have different prioritization processes. They have different guidelines for what's medically necessary. One may approve a certain assessment with a certain diagnostic tool, whereas the other may not. And so a lot of practices found it very challenging. Some of them had real financial struggles. So these are the moments where, a trusted tech forward, partner can really help you, because this is all at SILNA we do. We obsess over this. This is the singular focus we have. Whereas the practice, if you're running a practice, you have to, keep the lights on, tens, if not hundreds of different areas of your business.
Yeah, and it's really hard to keep the lights on if you don't have an authorization in place, or you think you do and you don't, right? Like that. So, it's just there's so much at stake here, and there's so much risk. And again, it is so overlooked and neglected for a lot of ABA practices. I think where you all come into, where is unique, and again, where even when I'm talking to someone that says I'm going to outsource billing, I'm going to get a trusted biller, take my claims on. Even in that situation, where you can come in is that you're going to look at the plans that this patient has proactively, where again, that biller can say, yeah, I did my benefit checks, but they don't know if they have a new primary, or they don't know if they lost their Medicaid waiver, or, is that a correct statement?
Yes. So we are really detailed in how we verify ABA specific benefits, where we track not just what the patient's cost share is, and we actually help providers generate a quote for patients or families for hey, what will you owe out of pocket? What does insurance cover, and how does that change over time? Which is like a cherry on top of what we like to call our basic, insurance verification product, because they can create price transparency for patients and their families. But more so, we get really deep into, does this plan actually cover ABA? Now, most plans in the US do, but there are some that don't, and you should be aware of that up front so you can have the right conversation with the family. We cover whether there's actually a primary on file that you're unaware of. So this plan's actually secondary, and because you weren't aware of that, if we hadn't covered that, you'd have had a billing challenge with coordination of benefits later, because insurance will deny, saying you have to actually submit claims to the primary before coming to us. We also help with understanding, place of service that are covered, authorization requirements. If an authorization is required, when it's required. Is it required for all forms of care? Is it required for treatment but not for the assessment, so you can get the assessment done really quickly? We get you that level of depth. And the other part is we are really proactive in this insurance monitoring pillar. So we have insurance verifications, what we call benefit checks, that are done at the time of intake, and then anytime a patient changes their insurance, if they ever just want to ad hoc just re-verify a patient, or in the first of the year, which is coming up soon, where you want to re-verify your entire patient roster, all the detailed benefits, to make sure that no major changes have been made in the new year, and if they have, you're aware of it. But then we also have this insurance monitoring solution that is a really proactive way to ensure that patients still have the plans they have, and if they've made changes, lost coverage, gained coverage, you're aware of it. So there's a lot of states where if you have a patient under Medicaid, they may be under Medicaid, but they may have changed and managed care plans under Medicaid. Right. And if you're not aware of that, you may go to your Medicaid portal and still see them as active, but you actually need a new authorization, and you need to start submitting claims to a different location. And if you don't do that, Medicaid will start denying, the managed care plan will start denying. And then, so we help with those transitions. We also help with whether a patient has gained new coverage you're unaware of. Maybe, dad had a job, maybe mom got a job too. Now you actually have a secondary. The secondary could cover your cost share, your co-pay or co-insurance you're otherwise paying out of pocket as a family, make care much more affordable for you. It's good for the provider, it's good for the patient. And so we can help uncover that when it comes up. And then obviously if a plan terminates, we'll cover that as well. And so this insurance monitoring is really proactive in making sure that it's not just like you verify them one time, like you said, and then you don't verify them for 6 months of the next authorization period. You're verifying them every week, every month, right, to make sure that they're continually cleared for care. And you just get proactively notified if there's action you need to take.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's move the conversation on to growers a little bit. Let's talk about how established owners can refine and scale their insurance workflows. So my question for you what are the main challenges you see providers run into with insurance workflow, like the workflow when starting to scale their business? Because there's probably a lot of similarities to the startup portion. But then looking at, because we talk about like when to know to scale, how to scale, what changes you need to make when you're scaling, whether you're just increasing the amount of patients that you're providing services for, or you're opening up multi-clinics, maybe you're started in home and now you're opening your clinic. So do you have any advice for us on scaling?
Absolutely. We work with a lot of providers in the scaling phase of their business who may have started with us when they were just getting off the ground, and now they're going from 50 active patients they're working with to 300 in the course of a year, and they're really thinking about, okay, what are the processes, teams, people I need to put in place to allow myself to scale? I think this is where, when some providers start off, they sort of trying to play the hero, and they're like, okay, maybe I have like a right-hand person who does just everything for me. They do my billing, they do my credentialing, they do my claims, they just like check benefits here and there. And they're just, doing 10 things at once. As you scale, you need more focus, you need more specialization, and you need more process. And where SILNA can help with is, getting that in place for these care readiness workflows. Let's take authorizations as an example. If you have one or two BCBAs, they may know when they have patients that have authorization expiring, they may create the new treatment plans in a timely manner. But when you scale to 10, 15 BCBAs, how do you ensure that it's not even, this is like one step removed from the insurance workflow, but how do you ensure they're getting treatment plans done in time that allows you to submit authorizations on time? So you need to put process in place, which is where SILNA can help here with note tracking when authorizations are expiring, notifying BCBAs when they are, ensuring that they're getting treatment plans submitted at least 30 days in advance of the authorization expiring, so there's enough time to get that new authorization on file prior to the previous authorization, ending. It is about creating structured intake processes for right when a family or patient comes in. You have a workflow where you're verifying the insurance. You shouldn't sort of, schedule them for an assessment until that insurance is verified. It is about making sure that you, when you have an authorization approval, you really ensure that what's approved matches what's requested. A lot of the times, the insurance may approve something slightly differently or not, or give you a partial approval. So it's rigor in making sure, like, not just that you submitted and you got an approval, but like you're tracking what you got approved for and making sure you're scheduling based off of that. So you're only scheduling as much as you have an authorization approved for. So there's a lot of these more detailed elements of the workflow that you need to start getting right the vast majority of the time if you are looking to scale. Because these sort of Band-Aid solutions don't work. And then you need really tight feedback loops. Why did I get that authorization denial? Oh, I'm starting to see more out-of-network responses from insurers when I verify patients under this plan. So you can start to look into it. You can have your credentialing team investigate why you're seeing more out-of-network when you thought you were in network with Aetna, but maybe turns out you're in network with the PPO, not the HMO plans.
Right.
For authorizations, you may start to look at why you're getting kickback authorization requests instead of having them approved the first time. You may notice your treatment plan templates aren't correct, where you're not justifying why this care is medically necessary well. You're not listing out as many functional goals as you could be, or you're not putting discharge plans in your treatment plans, which insurers want to see to ensure that at some point the patient can, gradually move off of care. And so we also, for growers, provide detailed reporting and insights for insurance verifications, for prior authorizations, for insurance monitoring that gives the business owner or like the executive a visibility into where are there bottlenecks in my process, at what locations are they happening, for what what are the reasons for it, so they don't have to go in and like go task by task and sort of investigate what's happening, but they get these packaged insights where they can make strategic decisions to say, I have 5 locations now. 1 out of 5 locations, the BCBAs are not getting treatment plans on time, so I need to just focus in on that problem. I'm having an issue with Aetna specifically. They're denying a lot more than I thought they were, because that they're saying I need a specific diagnostic tool to be used when rendering an assessment. So I actually need to update my processes to make sure, I change the way I do an assessment to make sure it meets what this insurer deems as medically necessary. So you can get really fine-grained and sort of block and tackle these issues as they come up, but do so at a more proactive and strategic level, and really focus on like at scale, how can I have fast authorization approvals? How can I get fast verifications complete? How can I know when a patient's not covered, why they're not covered, so I can inform my payer contacts or my credentialing team? That's really where we come in and help with.
And I think for growers, you probably already know this, but like this is the only piece that is ongoing and forever changing, right? Like again, the codes are pretty standard, right? I mean, we had this issue with telehealth there for a while, but that all the codes and modifiers are in your contract. They're not really changing all the time. Credentialing, it's done basically once and then you're in network, right? So it's this ongoing, ever changing. Oh, I used to fax in my auth and now I have to call and I have to get a peer-to-peer review.
Yeah, my favorite was like, I can't remember the pair now, but it was like you had to fax them and then they would fax back like a PIN number or something. And that like it was this most like ridiculous chaos. Like it was really interesting.
Blue Cross of South Carolina until recently had you fax request in to get a unique form to then submit for that specific patient plan, which was a really cumbersome process.
Right.
And to your point, to your earlier point, it's really tricky because, I talked about about like Florida, North Carolina, California, a couple examples of large changes made by payers. There's also small, subtle changes. They may just deprecate a fax number and say, oh, we have a new fax number. Start submitting there. And, because we work with so many different providers, if we catch that once through maybe one kickback of an authorization, we'll just update our rules and then it gets updates for every single provider. Yep. They may deprecate or change an email address. They may actually say, now we have a portal, go to the portal, stop submitting by fax. We're going to not approve any fax-based authorizations moving forward. So you have to just stay on top of all these little details. And as you said, this is sort of an ever-evolving workflow. The most complex detail that is often tough to uncover is like, what clinical guidelines is the payer using to adjudicate the authorization when I submit it? What are they actually reviewing? What is once it comes to the payer, what are the checklists they're going through to say, does my treatment plan match this? And some payers are more explicit about it, some payers are not. And you just sort of reverse engineer what it is that they're judging your request based off of. And because we work with a lot of providers, we're able to compile those rules. And we actually now have a really sort of powerful AI that right when you upload a treatment plan, can actually scan it and tell you, hey, this treatment plan meets this payer's criteria or it does not, and here's why, or this diagnosis report doesn't. And there's things we've done make sure that diagnosis reports are generated within the last 2 years, not the diagnosis is not more than 2 years old, because for this specific Medicaid program in Texas, they will deny the request if the diagnosis is more than 2 years old, and it's going to take you a long time to go and get the patient new diagnosis. So we'll just upfront tell you that this is likely not to get approved. And so we're going to give you those insights even prior to submitting, to give you a confidence score as to whether this will get approved or not. And that allows providers to save those extra 1 or 2 weeks of waiting for the insurance process, render a denial, and then go back to the family and get the document, to just get the document immediately. And it's those sorts of more advanced capability that as you're a grower are really important to making sure you can scale rapidly, scale efficiently, scale without creating a lot of firefighting for your team.
Yeah, I love that. That's when you were talking about this AI incorporate looking at treatment plans. We talk about medical necessity and how important it is, but it doesn't really matter. You can feel like you can explain medical necessity backwards and forwards and explain it through the lens of the student, the learner that you're writing this treatment plan for. And then some random payer somewhere is going to be no, we don't see that as medical necessity. Or just all of these, what feels like just random little obstacles to throw in to slow you down. And so I didn't know that you guys are doing that. Yeah, that's absolutely fabulous. I'm so jealous that you guys were not around 10 years ago, because I would that. I could totally geek off of just that piece, talking about that alone, because that's what we would do. We would try to take bits and pieces okay, this insurance wants this insurance wants this, Medicaid wants it, and try to compile it. But it really, it especially our newer clinicians, right? Like who are already learning how to write a treatment plan. And then you have that ethical situation as far as like, well, this is my clinical decision, my clinical recommendation. But if I say it this way, insurance isn't going to say yes. How do I navigate that? Like all of those pieces.
There's some elements like that, of course. But most of the challenges are actually much more sort of like specific and arbitrary in nature. For example, there are certain insurances that you just need to make sure the document is dated at a certain time or needs to be signed by a certain licensed physician.
Wow.
For an assessment, you make sure a certain diagnostic tool is being used. Like for treatment plan, you need to make sure in the last 6 months you've done a Vineland. These aren't, I think, or like certain outcome measures you've measured. This is not like a way you're changing what is actually medically necessary, what isn't, and you're sort of like trying to frame an argument a slightly different way. This is just, you haven't done a process that this specific insurer deems to be necessary, where other insurers don't, and you're not aware of that. And there are some growers, I would say, that have done a great job. And I've seen some of these SOPs. They're incredibly detailed. There's someone at the company's like taking the painstaking effort to go and write out for like 10 insurances, 15 insurances they're network with, for every type of authorization, for assessment authorization, for treatment authorization, for change of provider authorization. What are the steps necessary? What are the documents required? But then that lives in like a Word document or OneDrive somewhere, and it doesn't get updated. And also the problem is when you hire someone new, you have to train them on this, and it's tough for someone to like read through 20 pages to understand like, what are they supposed to do in this case? We take all those rules, but they're just codified into our platform, and like, AI looks at the same set of rules. And so when, you're using SILNA, you're taking advantage of all that research that we've done, but it's productized in a way where it just makes life easy for you, because we'll just tell you if something's relevant. Otherwise, we won't mention it at all. We'll tell you what files are required when you submit an authorization. Like this specific Medicaid requires a referral, so you make sure you have a referral from the primary care. This specific Medicaid in for treatment authorization needs a diagnosis. This commercial plan, you can actually get by without just a treatment plan and nothing else. So don't worry about like going and chasing down a new diagnosis report. So we can give you that specific guidance, and then even look at the documents and analyze them and flag if there's anything that we think could be concerning from getting that authorization approved up front.
Nice. And I think that we normally say, here's a takeaway. Is that not one of the things that we said for each group? Like,
or like a
journal,
like a journal, an assignment per.
I would highly recommend all of you, even starters. How much time are you spending on doing this piece? And I can guarantee you, this is the worst part of it all. Like again, credentialing is not that difficult. Billing is not that difficult once it's in the system. This is the piece that it's a punch in the gut every time. And so like, how much time are you spending making sure that you have the right things in the right time, and you're doing how much time are you spending? I would urge you to do that.
Like the reflection for the growers. Yeah, for sure. I think that's it. I think that's important in looking at your baseline. And of course, anytime as business owners, as we're deciding where to spend our money and when to delegate, when to outsource, and when to bring in help, right? Like we look at those pros and cons, and so start that pros and cons list, because I think you're gonna see it.
Yes, totally.
I think a way to just like maybe one specific anecdote to really guide that is, you don't sign up for the job to be on hold for insurance for 30 minutes to try to verify patients' benefits because you're not sure if you trust what's on the portal, because the portal doesn't say ABA, it says mental health, and you're like, I should probably call. But then you call all the time, or you don't call, but you get burned. Like that's not a situation, you want to be in, because that's not where you're uniquely using your capability on for advantage and edge. Yeah. And so I would encourage you to sort of focus on where you have an edge and where you may not have one, like partner with someone who can really accelerate that process for you.
I know when I was calling insurance, I used to say this all the time. I would call them 3 times and I get 5 different answers. Yeah. So like this is something like, where do you want to spend your time, right? Is this where, when you built an ABA business, was this where, hey, I want to be on the phone with insurance, right? Like this is all I ever wanted to do. I can guarantee most people don't. And there's just, when you're scaling, this is like, again, part of the process that is so unpredictable and is so nuanced and is really hard to tie down and scale. And so, of all of the risky parts of this, right? There's like session note auditing, and there's this where you can, with such a simple mistake, lose so much money, right? And yeah, so that's all. I just want to say that.
Excellent.
All right.
No, it's a great point. So like looking for closers, we're looking at potentially preparing all of our workflows for exit. And so in this case, looking at our insurance workflows. So when a provider is thinking about preparing for an exit, how does that affect their insurance workflows? What do they need to make sure they have in place, or what changes do they need to do? What's your advice on that?
Yeah, great question. An exit is all about demonstrating confidence in your business and predictability. And so when it comes to insurance workflows, it's about knowing what the inputs are, what the outputs are, what the baseline is, and demonstrating that you have a strong process in place where if there was someone that were to sort of acquire you, they will, this will be smooth for them to sort of take over, and they're not going to, have a lot of challenges or sort of unanticipated, pit holes to run through. And so how that is done, if you take the journey of a patient through this process, is one, demonstrating fast intake times for new patients when they come in, demonstrating that you have a very reliable process to verify benefits in a way that you have confidence in, they will get covered, or if not, you have the right feedback loops with families. And then it's to demonstrate that, from the time a family inquires about services to the time they have the assessment completed and treatment on file, that time frame, is predictable and ideally should be pretty fast. You don't want there to be an intake to a treatment starting that takes 45, 50 days. How can you get that to 20 days, 25 days, including the assessment being done in the middle, which means you have to submit the assessment authorization, get it approved, do the assessment, write the treatment plan, submit the treatment authorization, get it approved. How can you get that done soon? If you can prove to, someone that you have a really fast intake process, that means that they know that you're going to be competitive in the market if there's a family that's looking for services and they come to you, because you're going to be able to process them so fast. That also means the time to revenue, the time to bookings is faster. And then the financial health of the business really matters. What are your claim denial rates? What are claim denials due to authorizations, due to verifications? Can you break down your claim denial rates across all the various issues you have for claim denials? And do you have a good insight as to is this the norm? Am I actually in a healthy position here? If I'm not, what's my plan to get better? If you can credibly speak to these different parts of your process, that's where I think this exit becomes a lot more smooth, because you're going to put a data room together, you have to put all this information together, but people really want to understand, do you know the core parts of business inside and out? And are you sort of above where average is when it comes to these benchmarks? So you're more exciting to, to a potential, party that is looking to bring you onto their platform.
How do you know? It's so refreshing to meet people who are doing supplemental services in the ABA space who know about ABA, right? And the fact that you guys know so much about the ins and outs of ABA and insurance, not just an insurance person or, in your tech person saying, oh yeah, we can do ABA too. Where did you learn all about ABA? It seems like you're passionate about it.
I have to give credit to Jeff, my co-founder, who's spent many years in the ABA space prior and because he built a data collection platform and has a lot of sort of first-hand knowledge and experience. And then I think there's no shortcut to spending a lot of time with providers, really asking them about what problems keep them up at night, what their challenges are. And then once you get really deep in the problem, you sort of have an appreciation for the craft that is ABA, for the detail that gets put into treatment plans, the 10, 20 hours that it's taken to writing 40, 50 page documents, all the way from discharge plans, fade criteria, schedules. And, we are doing such a small part in helping providers here. They're the true heroes, but, unfortunately the system is designed in a way where you can do 9 things right. If you do one thing wrong, you're not going to get paid for the work you do, and that's going to be a real challenge to run and operate your business. And so we want to help you do that last one thing right, so that you can be sort of stress-free, focus on what gets you excited, what you do best, and have us take over, the more frustrating aspects of what it actually takes to run and scale a company for you, and just be a true partner. And listen, I want to also say, like, we, one, don't always get everything right to start, but we are incredibly, open, transparent, communicate with our partners. Two, we also, like a lot of our product roadmap, including this AI scanning treatment plans to flag if that meets payer criteria, was actually an idea that came from the ABA providers we work with. And so if you're an ABA provider, you may be sometimes working with, especially like EHRs or legacy software, where you want a change to be made. It's not made for 6 months to a year, if at all. Working with SILNA, we can evolve and update our platform really quickly. And I think it's really, you see the spark in someone's eye that they ask you to make a change, and in 2 months, it's live in software in their instance. And so we're really here to be just strong partners to ABA providers and help them grow and scale and be successful.
That's so excellent. I love that. Is there anything that we didn't cover today that you wanted to be sure our listeners, that you could tell the listeners?
I think we touched on the major highlights. I think maybe we didn't spend as much time on the verification process because we were really focused on authorizations. Maybe something I just say there is that there is a lot of challenges around that process too. Insurance continues to, you mentioned telehealth being not covered in many states. During COVID, there's a lot of telehealth being done. Now it's trying to get covered again. But there's a lot of nuances on verification and knowing like when you have to call and actually be on hold for a while because there's no other way to get accurate ABA benefits, when you can trust what's on the insurance portal, when you can trust most of what's on there, but there's online publications that insurance companies have posted to say, like, in these cases, we always cover ABA. For these plans, we never cover ABA. And like encoding those rules in, SILNA can do all that for you so that you don't have to worry about like the 3-4 different ways to get patients verified, and trust SILNA to utilize the most accurate method for ABA specific benefits. And then the last thing is, some of you as growers and as you expand your practice may also get into diagnostic testing or may get into speech, OT, PT, and, build a larger pediatric therapy umbrella with ABA as a core pillar. And so you may have to relearn all these workflows when it comes to these new specialties. And so that's also where it's important to see if you can find a partner that can help you sort of expand your ambition and, support you in those growth areas as well beyond ABA.
No, I would, again, for everybody out there, quiz your biller to see see if they knew all of those changes that Sagar had mentioned, right? Like, I just, like, I'm glad that SILNA is as one of our partners or an affiliate, because of the knowledge base that they have on ABA pre-authorizations is amazing. And again, it's so...
and I have to say, you guys are really good humans too. We really enjoy working with you. And I think sometimes that's something just as, especially like thinking about myself back in the shoes when I was a small business owner, right? Is like, there's so much judgment in the field. There's a lot of like criticisms and critical people in the field. And I've never once felt that from any of you guys at SILNA. It's such an open, just compassionate environment of, hey, we're here to help you. Let's work together to there's no judgment. Cause I know sometimes that is really hard to go and start working with someone like SILNA, is because you're like, oh, I can't let people to see like what mess I have right now, or that I don't really even know where to start. But I just wanted to throw that out there too, just like, cause you guys are just fantastic humans and really nice to chat with and talk to. So.
Yeah, I mean, other than accounting and attorney, I don't know of anything else that I would want off my plate as an ABA, like when we were doing our business.
Totally.
As this, there's nothing else. I'm serious. And I would urge everyone listening to this to take a look at how much time they are, in my opinion, wasting on taking care of this, making sure, like you said, your BCBA team has
and
put
still
in
missing that one thing, right?
Yeah, and then it's just so much to keep up with, and why would you if you don't need to? Well, and I do have one other question for you, Sagar. Do you have just for the ABA geeks out there that love data? Like, do you have any data on how much quicker you're getting pre-auths done versus like someone doing it on their own? Do you all have anything like that?
We do have data around that. We've recently published a case study with a fast-growing provider called Answers Now that we partnered with for a little less than a year, where there's a lot of data around, their turnaround times that they were seeing prior to working with SILNA, and then working with SILNA, what they're trying to see. And a big reason for that is not just, getting the authorization submitted fast once you have the supporting documentation, but it's also persistently and proactively following up with insurance companies to ensure that authorizations are approved, or if there's additional information required or if there's a denial, you're flagging that really quickly. So we don't just stop at the submission. We go end to end to make sure you have that final approval letter on file that matches what you requested, as soon as possible. And that's live on our website, and I can share a link after this call.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Or put in the session notes. And then more broadly, we track, when we work with providers, we typically ask them, what are your benchmarks? Especially if they're growers, they may know their benchmarks. And our goal, if we do a pilot with them, is to sort of show that we can meaningfully improve on their benchmarks and get them authorizations approved faster. And the last thing is we also help providers submit authorization requests earlier, because we actually notify their BCBAs and clinical directors, like, hey, this is expiring soon. And we're like slightly persistent, maybe
Right.
a little annoying.
Yeah.
We have email notifications that go out, and it's actually changed behavior of providers. So it's not all just like submitting things efficiently. It's about how do you change behavior, do you change management, change culture, change process. And that's also where we can be a change agent to providers with.
Oh, I love it. On that note, we sadly have to end our conversation for today, but guess what? They'll be back again. So I don't know if it'll be you, Sagar, but we'll hear from SILNA again on the podcast. It'll be an ongoing conversation that we continue to have, because it's just important information, whether you decide to go with SILNA or not. It's just part of our mission here. Part of our intention is to help you to be curious, to ask questions, and just to figure out what you need to know that you don't know, and what questions to ask, and just to understand the fact that there are a lot of parts and pieces to running a business that you may not be aware of. So, to challenge you to look into that. And then also I want to put out my regular challenge for you to reach out to a local provider in your community, down the street, across town, and reach out to them and say, hey, how can I help? Or do you want to grab a coffee? Or I have this new thing that I tried and it's really working. You want to hear about it? Whatever it is that's important to you, or whatever you want to share, or however you want to reach out, please reach out to another BCBA, ABA owner in your area, because we all have to band together, work together. It's important. Okay, guys. So you will find all the information that you need on SILNA in the show notes. Yep. And you can also go to our website.
Yes. They'll get an extended trial.
So go to our affiliate page on our website, which all of this will also be in the show notes. And there's special perks if you go to SILNA through us. Let them know that you listen to the podcast and you want to know more. Then we have our podcast hotline. If you have any questions, if you have any stories to follow up from after listening to today's podcast, please call the hotline and leave your story or leave your question, and you might find yourselves on another episode when we do an Ask Me Anything. All right. Thank you again, Sagar. This has been amazing. And thank you for everyone listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you both so much. This was a pleasure.